Welcome back to Rank Anything. Clue! Everyone loves Clue, right? But anyway, Clue was a big part of my childhood, and it's actually a pretty old game. Like, it was started in the late 40s, and I think one of the reasons it stood the test of time, outside of the gameplay, is the suspects. And, like, those suspects are so unique and different from each other. So today, we'll be ranking the 6 primary Clue suspects. And this list is mostly going to be from my own experiences as a kid growing up with the version I grew up with. I know the movie will come into play, but only in certain instances. Before we start, there's been a lot of other Clue versions throughout the years, so I want to quickly run down a bunch of other characters that were one-timers or one-offs. Miss Peach, Monsieur Brunette, Madame Rose, Sergeant Grey, Captain Brown, Mr. Slate Grey, what the fuck? Dr. Orchid, Lady Lavender, Mr. Meadowbrook, that's not even a color, Prince Azure, Rusty Nailer, that sounds inappropriate, Lord Grey, Madame Ruby, General Umbar, Miss Azul, Mr. Pine, Sergeant Ubi, Dr. Rose, Professor Oak, and the Black Dog. All right, let's get to the list. In last place, Mr. Green. Mr. Green sucks. First of all, let's talk about the name. The unique thing about Clue names is that they're all colors, but they're not just the color. Plum, mustard, scarlet, peacock. But Mr. Green, you couldn't have called him Mr. Moss or Mr. Ivy or whatever. You had to go with Mr. Green. And second, again, this list is from my perspective. So when I'm playing the game, I'm like, oh, look at all these cool characters, and just a guy. He's just a bald man. Now, I get they're supposed to be going for businessman, but that doesn't translate. And apparently he was like a priest in the 40s. Oh, Reverend Green, that's pretty cool. But then they're like, okay, we don't want a priest murdering people, which is fine. Then they made him like a mobster, which is cool. You had all these other cool things, and you settled from the version I grew up with is just a guy. Just a guy named Mr. Green. How unoriginal. Screw you, Mr. Green. Number 5, Miss Peacock. So this one's an interesting one because growing up, I always thought that Miss Peacock and Miss Scarlet were like the same archetype. Like they're both the young, attractive ladies. Just Miss Peacock likes to get dressed up more. That's what I thought, at least, until later on, until I realized, oh wait, no, she's supposed to be like the Grand Dame character. Like in the original versions, she's like the old lady Grand Dame, which is really great. I think that's a good archetype on its own. But then she just gets younger and younger, and apparently, like in some versions, like Miss Peacock is the mother of Miss Scarlet. It's like they look the same age. And then in the newer version, they made her even younger. That's ageist. I mean, it's not really ageist, but it's kind of ageist considering she went from this to this. The whole thing is a mess. Miss Peacock is a cool name, though. That makes her better than stupid Mr. Green. Number 4, Mrs. White. Now, every murder mystery mansion whodunit game needs a maid character. And she fills that role really well. Her name's a little bland. It's just like Mr. Green. They could have done better. But apparently, they killed her off. Mrs. White's dead. I'm not talking about, like, in the game dead, but she doesn't exist anymore. They replaced her with, like an attractive doctor called Dr. Orchid. Like, she's gone. And I get it. Like, it's 2020. Maybe you want to, something better than Mrs. White as a name, but, like, moment of silence for Mrs. White. Number 3, Miss Scarlet. The essential, the iconic femme fatale. Her name alone is really well done. Her artwork is great. I mean, she fits that archetype perfectly in a game like this. And even growing up, I remember like Miss Scarlet was always one of the more popular characters. Like nobody wanted to play as Mrs. White or Mr. Green first. Like they were always the last ones. Like she was always first picked. I mean, She is an icon of this game. An icon! But not iconic enough to be top 2. Number 2, Colonel Mustard. Colonel Mustard's great. He's great. Especially when you view him in the context of the other characters. It's like, oh, you have this dignified party. You have the professor and the businessman and the maid. And then the hunter slash war veteran. I mean, it's a good archetype. It's apparently supposed to be a great white hunter slash imperialist. Like, that's so random. It's kind of out of place, but it really fits. And those mutton chops, the mutton chops alone, he probably deserves number 1 based on uniqueness alone, but I can't do it. I can't do it. I'm sorry, Colonel Mustard fans. I just can't do it. Number 1, Professor Plum. This is my list at the end of the day. And to me, Professor Plum, always the character that I picked. I'm not sure why. Part of that is that fantastic artwork. Maybe I was kind of a neurotic, weird kid, and like, oh, I can relate to this guy. I mean, the name alone, Professor Plum, is amazing. And ultimately, I said this at the beginning, this is where the movie comes into play, because in the movie he's played by the great Christopher Lloyd, and between Mustard and Plum, the Christopher Lloyd tiebreaker pushes him in favor. So congratulations, Professor Plum. Welcome to the Rank Anything Hall of Fame. And that's the list. Thanks for watching. And if you don't agree or get angry, it's Clue. Come on, you dorks. Next week, we will be talking about, Anthony Mackie movies.